Doing a tag on Tag Tuesday. Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome to Tag Tuesday, and I'm going to do a tag. There was a time in my BookTube history where I did tags every single Tuesday. I must have done hundreds of tags probably in the first 4 or 5 years that I was on BookTube, and at some point I just felt like I was giving the same answers over and over again. So now when I do a tag, it either has nothing to do with books, which are the answers obviously to most book tags, or I think it's just something new, or it's just on a topic, or the title of the tag in some way appeals to me. And that's true with the tag I just saw, an original tag that Gareth over at Book Songs and Other Magic made yesterday, and this is the Hitchhikers Guide to the Galaxy book tag, and he was kind enough to mention me in that video as having recommended a book to him. And so I saw the tag and I thought, this is definitely something I want to do. I haven't been making a lot of videos lately. I thought, this is a good way to get back into maybe making videos more often, doing a few more tags. So I have the questions that Gareth asked as a part of the tag here on my phone. I'm going to try to read those with my really bad vision from my phone, and I have my answers here on a note card, which is normal so that I don't forget. So we'll get into the questions. But I did want to say that the reason why this tag appealed to me the most was because as a kid, as let's say a teenager, early teens, mid-teens, I had a television in my room, and it had what we used to think of as cable television back in the day, which meant I got like 12 channels, and the coaxial cable plugged into the back of the TV and all kinds of stuff like that. And one of the channels I got was the Houston PBS channel, and they showed BBC productions on that channel. So, I watched early 1980s, late 1970s BBC comedies like Is There a Doctor in the House? I believe was the one that I watched. I think I watched The Goonies on there, maybe, and then they also broadcast the BBC version of Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And this is how I was introduced to the book, was through the BBC adaptation. And I always thought that was great, and I still think it's great. And I have seen the movie adaptation with Martin Freeman, and I still prefer the old TV show in all kinds of ways. But that's kind of my connection to this, and then I read the books, went to college, and a lot of the people I knew in college had read the books. And I read through, I believe, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, which is just the second book, and I never went any further. Maybe I'll go back and correct that now, but I really enjoyed the books and the BBC miniseries, so that's kind of why I wanted to do the tag, not to mention that, Gareth is a great guy, and we should, all support one another, even me, old cynic who doesn't do very many tags. So anyway, here are the questions. Question number 1, demolishing your house. What book would you look for first to save from the demolition? So Arthur Dent's house is going to be destroyed by the Vogon destructor fleet in A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And he, doesn't have time really to save anything. Doesn't really have time to save anything, and so this is a question based on what we save, and it makes us choose a book. This is kind of a version of the, what book would you take to a desert island if you only had to read one book, which would it be? Well, this time I think it really appeals perhaps more to sentiment than the quality of the book. And like Gareth, I have lots of answers. If my first thought was I would save the paperback editions of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit that I received from my parents as a gift back in 1977, 1978, because those mean a lot to me, and I've had those books, ever since then. But I decided the book that I would pick is this edition or copy of Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, which my now wife gave me when we had been dating for 3 years, and she wrote a note to me, one of those kind of notes you write to the person you're in love with when you're young. I think I would have been 21 when this book came out, maybe just 20, 58 now, so I've had this book a long time too. Anyway, it has that sentimental message in it, and it's a gift from my wife, so I probably would rescue this book above all the other books. So question 2 then is about the Vogons. The Vogons write poetry. It's really bad poetry, so bad that some people actually die. listening to it. So the prompt is to quote a line of poetry or a lyric that you love. So my favorite poem is a Shakespeare sonnet, as is probably true for lots of people. And that's Shakespeare sonnet number 29, which I was introduced to and as a song that the choir, my high school choir, was preparing for competition. Somebody had set it to music and we sang it. Ironically, I didn't get to go to that choir competition because I didn't make a high enough grade in my, I think it was my chemistry class that year, and so I didn't get to go to competition. And ironically, my wife, who I knew in high school, also didn't get to go, and she was in the same choir. And that was one of the times we got to spend some time together, was hanging out with the kids who didn't get to go to competition from choir. So anyway, I'm supposed to try to recite this. Actually, I have it here on my phone so I don't mess it up, but I know most of it. So here we go. When in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries. And look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee. And then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered, such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. That is my absolute favorite poem. I think, as I said, it was read at my wedding, and there's that whole connection to choir. And so I think that's probably it. So going back to questions on my phone, question 3, 42, the answer to life, the universe and everything. That's famously the answer to life, universe and everything in the Douglas Adams series is the number 42, and then they have to figure out what the question is. So to understand the answer, you have to figure out what the question is. So Gareth asks, what's the point? What's the meaning of life? And I'm just going to go with a hippy-dippy answer, which really is my answer, and that's love. I made a video a long time ago called Love is God, which I think is probably one of my most understood videos, which is kind of a play on the Christian idea that God is love. But really what I was attempting to talk about in that video was elevating love itself to the place of reverence with which many people of all kinds of different religions place God. Because I believe love is our highest calling, our highest attribute. To treat with love one another, to impart our love to those who love us, to treat in a loving way those we don't know, to act and be guided by the principle of love for humanity. I think that's the highest purpose, and you can call that whatever you want to. You can call that any religion you want to, because I think at the heart of most of them is this concept of love. So to me, that is the point, to generate love, to create love, to show love to the people that I love, and then to humanity in general. Let's see, question number 4. It's a radio beginning. I didn't know this, but Gareth said that the Hitchhikers Guide to Galaxy series actually began as a radio play. And so he asked, what's your favorite memory or experience as a listener to the radio? This is going to date me. I already said I was 58, so, it's already out there how old I am. But, when I was a teenager, and growing up in a small city, which didn't get MTV, I don't think, until around 1984. Maybe it was late 1983. We listened to the radio. That's where you consume music, was on the radio. And growing up in a relatively isolated small city of around 30,000 people in the middle of the piney woods of East Texas, radio options were limited. My town had several radio options. Most of them were country. One of them was pop, and one of them was a radio station which played what it called album rock. And I think all they meant by that was that they played tracks that weren't necessarily the tracks that were singles. Back in the day, kids, radio companies and bands and groups issued singles, and these were small records about that big called 45s, because they played at that RPMs on a record player, on a stereo, and then each side contained one song. Well, this album station could play deeper cuts, deeper tracks from albums, because they actually had the whole album on hand and weren't just playing singles. Anyway, one of the things that I liked the most, when I was just sitting at home with a radio, was trying to pick up radio stations from Houston. And My favorite radio station from Houston was KLOL, K101, because they played, hard rock music, which was hard to find where I grew up, and that's the kind of music I liked. So on the odd occasions when I could get KLOL on the radio, those were big days for me. And if you could get it on the car radio while you're driving around, as you did in East Texas, a teenager doing not much of anything, that was just a good time all in of itself. So that's probably my favorite radio-related memory. Let's see, that was question 4. Question 5, the towel. What book or books would you pack for a holiday? So I'm going to give a general answer here and say that usually what I like to do when I'm going on a holiday is I try to limit myself to maybe one physical book and then books on my Kindle, of which I have a variety, just in case something isn't working, or something like that. I have lots to go through. But at least one of those books will have something to do with the place where I'm going. So if we went to Iceland, I had a book I had a detective book by an Icelandic author. When we went to, Germany, I read a book by German. Anyway, so you see the point. That's usually what I take. And so I'm going to give that as a general answer rather than list specific books I would take on holiday now, because it would depend on where I'm going. Let's see. Question 6, the Infinite Improbability Drive. That's the faster than hyperspace drive that the spaceship that Arthur Dent and Zaphod Beeblebrox and Jillian, etc., travel on when they're going through on their adventures in the books. The Infinite Improbability Drive, name a fast read. So this is a book that you can read really fast, and I think this is fairly just me, idiosyncratic to me, but I can read almost any book about World War I fast. So it can be fiction, it can be nonfiction. I read those books fast. So World War I, when I was, in graduate school and in undergraduate, World War I was a topic which fascinated me, both for the, horrific conditions the soldiers went through in World War I, but also for the literature that it produced. I've mentioned this before, that I wrote a graduate school paper about historical action in World War I fiction, and that really got me into reading a lot of World War I fiction and then World War I histories, of which I've read several, and I've read lots of World War I fiction as well. And generally speaking, whether it's Eric Maria Remarque or Thomas Boyd or Pat Barker or David Diop, I read these books really quickly, and it is probably driven by my interest in the books, probably driven by a sense of suspense where I wonder if they're going to mention something about something I already know about or about something I don't know about, and that really probably are books that I read fast. So again, I'm not sure how helpful it is to other people looking for book recommendations from this, but that's kind of where I am. Let's see, question number 7. Don't panic. That's on the cover of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in the book. Name a book with great levels of tension or suspense. So I'm going to say here, Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. So R.F. Kuang more, I think, famously writes kind of like dark academia, maybe sci-fi, fantasy type books, of which I've read none of her other books. I haven't read Babel. I haven't read The Poppy Wars. No, she has a new book out now. But Yellowface was different. Yellowface was about writers. And in the book, essentially, there is a young woman who is friends with a really successful, in both ways, I think in terms of sales and critical reception, author who is of Asian descent. So the author who we follow isn't, but the successful author is, and they are celebrating this author's new novel coming out, and they really are friends, except that the one friend is jealous of her friend's success, and that friend dies during the celebration, which isn't really funny, but is kind of funny. And then this friend, whose Asian author friend has died, decides she's just going to pretend that author's manuscript was hers. And she's going to submit it as her work. And this leads to a whole lot of tension about whether or not she's going to get caught, because she is really foolish and she accepts speaking engagements and she allows her publisher to change her name so that it appears as though she might be Asian. And she accepts these speaking events where people look at her and say, you're not Asian. And she starts getting these cryptic messages about, kind of like the equivalent, I know what you did. And there's a great deal of tension in the book for me based on whether or not she was going to get away with it. And I thought one of the brilliant things about the book was that you know she shouldn't get away with it. You know she's wrong. It's not, you know, she's A, stolen her friend's manuscript who's died, and B, cultural appropriate. You know it's wrong. And so there are all those questions in the book as well. But you're wondering if she's going to get away with it. And, you know, I found myself, you know, as oftentimes I do, you know, in some ways hoping she got away with it, even though knowing she shouldn't get away with it. And I thought that created a lot of tension, kind of unexpected for me in that book. Let's see, so that was question 7. Question 8, TV and film adaptations. Pick a book to discuss. One or more TV film adaptations that you know of the book. Pick good, bad, it's irrelevant, it's as long as it's relevant to the book. So the book I'm going to pick is Erasure by Percival Everett. Shocker, I found a way to talk about Percival Everett in a tag video. Erasure is his book about a black author of literary fiction who struggles to have success, whose books oftentimes he finds are shelved in places he doesn't want them to be shelved, and he becomes frustrated, not just because of things going on in his personal life with his family, he becomes frustrated about the success of what he feels like are black authors who write books that exploit the stereotypical black experience. And so he decides he's going to do the same thing. And that really changes lots of things about his life, about his family, about how he thinks about himself. And the book is brilliant, and the movie is brilliant without being a 100% faithful adaptation of the book. It adapts the ideas, the themes of the book without going scene by scene. It adapts the ideas of the book without feeling like it had to reproduce the book exactly how the book is. And I thought the book, this is one of those cases where I think the book is brilliant and really, really eviscerates a lot of things about the literary community and about readers and about, you know, publishing that I thought were just brilliant. And it asks, as I think Everett's best work does, ask some difficult questions which don't have comfortable answers. And I thought the movie did a great job, even though it was different. So that would be my answer to question 8. Question 9 is to tag people. I feel like it would be hypocritical for me to tag people, to do any tag, since I've not been doing tags recently. But if this seems like something you want to do, I'll leave the questions down below. I'll leave a link to Gareth's original video down below as well, so you can see his video and see the questions. And if you want to do this tag, please do the tag, particularly if you loved, you know, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, as I did, both the TV series and the book. Anyway, there you go. There is my version, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy tag. Thanks, Gareth, for creating this tag. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.